And let's, stay positive here. Let's start off on the good note, I think, and talk about some teams that are playing really well. Teams like the Padres and the Diamondbacks, who are two of the hottest teams in baseball, chasing down the Dodgers, who probably wish they were playing a little bit better right now.
When we said this for a while, that the Diamondbacks just simply had to play better, and obviously they'd like to get Eduardo Rodriguez back in
And they've been
the
playing
rotation
great
as well.
recently.
But they have both they and the Padres. I think they're on a 9-2 run. Both teams.
Both teams are 8-2 at least in the last 10.
And so they have put themselves now solidly in the wild card conversation behind the Braves. And now the Mets have kind of slid back a little bit.
The Padres are ahead of the Braves, and the Diamondbacks are tied with them now.
So, we're getting into the part of the season where, teams fall back like the Braves. We thought they were a solid number one wild card.
Right now, they are no longer. Right now, it looks like you're going to have a really excited, at least National League wild card race. You've got a bunch of teams that are all within 3.5, 4 games of the wild card, plus some other teams that are kind of lurking in the background, like 4.5, 5 to 6 games back. So you're going to have a bunch of teams that are in it going down the wire, because really the only teams that are kind of out of it at this point, at least in terms of the wild card, are probably the Nationals, the Marlins, and the Rockies. And that's kind of really it.
Right, and even the Nationals, who won today here on Sunday, they're pesky,
they're
as you like to say.
They're 9 games back of the wild
right, they're
card.
not,
that's kind of hard to make
But they're
up.
bothering teams because they beat the Brewers today in a game in a series the Brewers needed.
And it's very likely that they're the type of team that's going to ruin some team's season. Some team's going to play them in September and lose a series to them, and that's going to knock them out of the wild card.
And the Padres, having played so well lately, we really think that I really think that they're a team when they get Darvish back that the Dodgers now actually need to worry about.
The Dodgers are now in a fight for the division, which I don't think they expected to be in, and shockingly, so were the Phillies.
Right, had the Phillies not won today, and they won today, and Zach Wheeler went out today and did what number one starters do.
Needed him to do.
That is the stopper, right? A 6-game losing streak. Right?
They're 2-8 in their last 10.
And Zach Wheeler goes out and spins a gem, and they basically put down.
Breathe a sigh of relief. Go, okay, you know what? The biggest thing for them is that the Braves have not been playing great in the same stretch. They're a little above 500.
Yeah, Max Fried got roughed up again today. My Cy Young pick does not look very good.
And they're going into a tough series against the first-place Brewers, who have also been kind of like – baseball, it's interesting. You've had a lot of really good teams. Really, all of the teams at the top of their division, with the exception of the Cleveland Guardians, have not been playing great lately.
I'm glad you mentioned the Guardians because basically, it's such they're the team that continues to surprise, and they had another good week. And the Twins, it's not like the Twins are playing bad. They won 1 out of 3 against the Mets, but then they went in over the weekend and won a series. And I'm going to go watch them play next week. Bailey Ober has been pitching fantastic.
They're 7-3 in their last 10. They're a half game up on the wild card, so they're feeling good right now because it's them and the Yankees with the Royals right behind them. And for those teams, they're kind of all looking at it going, okay, if we can just keep things level, we're good, because right now it looks like if you're going to be an AL West team, you better win that division.
You better win that division. I think that's the Rangers just confound me. Every time you think they're turning a corner, all of a sudden Max Scherzer is back on the IL.
At a certain point, you kind of got to just be like, okay.
The big news is Jacob deGrom is going to throw an actual rehab start now. So he has progressed past doing a bullpen.
Right. Problem. It's August. They're 9.5 games back of a wild card.
So I agree with you. I think that division is only going to put out one team. And I think the Guardians and the Twins will probably both make the playoffs if I had to pick right now.
The Royals could too.
Yeah.
They could be the third wild card.
Yeah, you're right.
Easily.
You're right. Although the Yankees and the Orioles are tied
for the
in
division,
a flat-footed tie.
And then you've got the Red Sox behind them at 59 and 51, but they're 2.5 games back of the wild card spot.
But if you have the Yankees or the Orioles in both those teams in, there's not that much room. There's only room for 2 more wild card teams.
Right, but the Royals and the Twins have a lock on that right now. They're up on those. And so
it wouldn't surprise me if the Guardians actually lost the division and still were a wild card team.
Right. So realistically, the Red Sox have the biggest chase down to have to happen. And then the AL West is you better win that division.
I went to the game at Citi Field last Wednesday, and Severino pitched a terrible game. But they got they hit the ball from the first inning, and we were lucky as a Met fan not to see Bailey Ober, who I just mentioned before. So he's the first Twin in 10 years, in a decade, to throw 8 consecutive quality starts. Now, we talk on this podcast. Quality starts is sort of an overrated statistic. That would mean 6 innings and only giving up 3 runs. But 8 in a row, all of a sudden that's
Right, there is value
being
in that.
consistent, and he's not a pitcher. I think you could ask a lot of people to name the Twins starting rotation.
They would
I don't
not.
think Bailey Ober would come up for a
Now,
while.
I think the problem with being consistent is that there are some teams out there that are being consistent, just consistently terrible, and we have to talk about the Chicago White Sox.
right. Well,
They've lost 20 in a row as
historically,
of today, Sunday.
right? Now they're only one of 14 teams in Major League, 7 teams in Major League history that have lost 20 games in a row. They have 2 14-game losing streaks. That's what
Think
I have
about
to
this.
say.
Every team in the major leagues got to 40 wins before they got to 30.
Well, yeah. I mean,
That's shocking.
they're and here's the bizarre thing I heard this week. They're talking now. It's August about firing the manager. Like 2 months ago when they were terrible.
Well, I guess the
Wasn't
thing
that
is,
the idea
was
to do
anything
that?
going to change if you got rid of Griffall?
It isn't. But if you're going to not fire him then, why fire him now?
I guess they're just going to fire him in the offseason.
So I think when they lose 20 in a row,
You
you owe it to your fan base to say we're going to do something.
Right. At a certain point, you have to do something just because it's just like, okay, wait, you've lost 20 games in a row. You have to act like you're willing to do some amount of change because it's just so incomprehensibly bad. I mean, they are, without a doubt, the worst team in baseball. It's not particularly close. There's no team that even has 30 wins right now. They have under 30. Every team has above 40.
They are worse than the winning percentage right now of the 1962 Mets.
And the 2000
erase the Mets
and the 2003
And,
Tigers.
as long as I've been a baseball fan, the Mets had the record of the worst team in the history of baseball over a season. I wouldn't mind if somebody else owned the
Right,
record.
and it's shocking because the White Sox I think they have 27 wins this year, and they have
I think you're
28
right.
blown saves.
Right, 28 blown saves. They had the most save opportunities of any team in baseball at 45. They only converted 17, as you just said, out of those 45. No wonder you're terrible.
You have more blown saves than losses. That's got to be torturous for White Sox fans. I mean, I can't imagine too many of them are watching at this point.
And going to work every day and being on a team like that, and you
I
know-
think at this point, when you look at the team averages, like today, it's on Sunday, they play the Twins, and every hitter in the White Sox lineup had a lower average than the lowest guy in the Twin lineup. Some teams have higher team batting averages than the White Sox have winning percentage.
So, before the season, we thought that the A's were going to be this team, or the team that was like historically bad, the worst
And
team.
the A's are just
And the A's
regular
are
bad.
not.
Right. The
They're
A's,
just regular bad.
they're just regular bad. And I'm pretty sure the Oakland ownership is loving the fact that they're just normal bad.
Guess where the White Sox go for the next 3 games?
Oh, well, they
go to Oakland.
That might be the lowest. I mean,
That's like
if
the toilet
nobody
bowl. That's
observes,
like the toilet bowl we used to call
think
that.
about it. Nobody's going to watch that series. So can we really say they actually played it? If nobody watches, if no fan ever sees anything from that game, did they actually have
The
it?
heck with that. Oakland's saying we could sweep them. we could get us.
I guess the good thing is you're probably going to get off the schneid in this series if you're the Athletics. It's hard for me to believe that they're going to lose.
The Schneid? Well, meaning like they would win a series.
No, they just win a game.
The White Sox would be the team that would.
That's
like,
what I meant.
Yeah. Maybe they'll actually have a win out of this. So yeah, the White Sox are historically bad, and I hope that they will erase a record that I have had to live with my whole life. And so a lot of things happened this week that we should talk about. And one of them would be that Mike Trout is not going to play baseball again this season.
Again.
And
He's barely played. If you look at his last, since 2020, so since the COVID-shortened season, he's only played 100 games in one or more seasons.
Yeah.
In 4 years. And what you're seeing now is you're seeing a degradation of his career where, and this is going to sound silly, he's just going to be a Hall of Famer.
Right. So from being all-time
Like
great player.
He was on the track. If he had stayed healthy these last 4 seasons, he was on a track to be in like Bonds category.
And doing it today in this
Would have
day
been
and age
impressive.
would have been even all the more
And especially
impressive.
on a team where he virtually, outside of Ohtani, never had any help. So it would have been but now he's just going to be almost a...
I'd say Ohtani was a lot of help.
Right,
when he
but
was
he's
there.
going to be a what-if case in the Hall of Fame, which is going to be very interesting.
There's some people out there going, well, let's take a look at his career, and maybe he didn't play.
The
long
guy
enough
has
to get
90
that.
career
Yeah,
WAR.
I just anybody that says Mike Trout isn't a Hall of Famer, we've said this for like 4 years on this.
You
podcast.
wa-
he was a Hall of Famer like 5 years ago.
Right, he
or
was a
6
Hall of
years
Famer
ago.
before 2020.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what's happened now. He could never play bad enough all of these seasons to get rid of it. But he's just he's not going to be in the Pantheon now. He was a guy that was headed into the Pantheon to be talked about in the same sort of rarefied air as DiMaggio and Mantle and
Right.
Derek.
I agree.
He was going to be
I
that
agree.
type of player. And now he's just the same way DeGrom had a chance to be a Koufax type
And isn't,
pitcher
right.
and isn't. Trout had a chance to be a Mantle type outfielder and won't be.
But we can talk about his pain in the neck team, which took 2 of 3 from the Mets this weekend.
Well, I mean, they won
in
some
Los
baseball
Angeles.
games.
And it's just like it was almost as if like this was the Angels series. Like, okay, it's a New York team, and now the Angels fly to New York and they play the Yankees.
I'm just
next.
going to say that is super East Coast bias.
Well,
I guarantee you the Los Angeles Angels were not sitting there thinking this is our series for the year.
I think when it's back-to-back with the Yankee series coming up this week, if they were to come into New York and win 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, and go, you know what? We played the Mets and the Yankees. They both, are having good seasons, and we beat them both.
I don't think
the
teams
best we're going to get this
I don't
year.
think teams think about New York that much.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right.
That's a very New York perspective right there. They're not circling their calendar. Oh, we got the Mets and the Yankees
But
coming up this
if I'm
week.
the manager, Ron Washington of the Angels, I'm like, you beat the Yankees, you beat the Mets. You guys are.
You can start to turn it around.
Exactly. So you're
Right,
going
you're going to sell that, but I don't think you're selling. I don't think they're circling these dates in June, going, "Oh, I can't wait to play the Mets in early August."
Across town, you mentioned the Dodgers, and they are just sort of like holding on to their lead.
I think the Dodgers are afraid because the vaunted reinforcements coming in the form of Clayton Kershaw were not reinforcements in the least. He got absolutely shelled in his first start back. Now, it is a first start back. We saw Garrett Cole in his first start back look terrible against the Mets, and I think it wasn't that Garrett Cole is terrible. He just can't pitch against the Mets, apparently. So you can hope that Kershaw is going to bounce back, but having Freddie Freeman come back, Max Freeman is out of the hospital.
Max who?
Freddie Freeman's son. He was in the hospital with Bear syndrome, and he's out of the hospital now. So that should probably help take away some of the cloud that was hanging over that team. But that's a team being like, okay, Mookie,
hurry.
When are you coming back?
And it's not like Ohtani isn't killing it because he just became
a 30-30 member.
A 30-30 guy.
He has a chance at a 50-50 season.
Well,
He'll probably end
said
up
that
at
before
40,
the podcast. That's amazing, right? Because there's never been a 50-50 player.
Right. And he's got 51 games left. He needs 17 homers and 19 steals.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely he gets both of those because it's going to require him to run too much.
Right.
I think some of you were saying that the Dodgers aren't going to let him steal 50
I don't
bases.
want Shohei. If I've got a lead enough that the Dodgers are going to win the division and they're up by 4 or 5 games in mid-September, I don't want Shohei Ohtani stealing
the
bases.
The question is, if he gets enough steals between now and then, does he just go, yeah, but I want to go for it?
Yeah,
and you might have to listen to him because what are you going to do? Tell Shohei Ohtani no?
Or a 50-50 season would be enough that you might want to kind of stretch it and go.
Right. Now, so it's also going to depend on his homers. My guess is that if he doesn't hit a bunch of homers in the month of August, they might be like, well, I mean, you need to hit 10 home runs in the month of September. You're probably not going to do that, Shohei. So let's not let you run.
He might.
He could, but they would love to just not have to make that decision just because he doesn't get close enough in the home runs.
And so you mentioned Blake Snell at the top here, and the Giants, who I still don't believe in them, but they hang around enough that you can't eliminate them from your thinking.
Right, they're still hanging around. Their biggest issue is that they're pretty much straight a wild card team, so they have to hope they play really well down the stretch, and all the teams in front of them struggle a little bit. So I think they're just going to run into a situation where it might be too much of a mountain for them to climb.
Yeah, I agree.
They need the Braves, the Mets, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks.
Even the Cardinals.
And even the Pirates, who technically have a better record than them right now. To at least one or two of those teams take enough of a step back that they play well enough that they can creep in. So I think it's just going to be too hard for them to really pull that off.
And I think you had said that Blake Snell, who had never thrown a pitch in the ninth inning.
In a start. He had thrown a pitch in the ninth inning because he came in a relief appearance at one point.
Good distinction.
So he had never done it in a start before. So he never pitched in the ninth inning, and then he throws a no-hitter this week. It was pretty funny because he was basically like, yeah, well, I think Bob Melvin was going to take me out at a certain point, so I just started chucking it down the middle.
There was a pitch limit, right? So he just started throwing the ball down the middle and going, okay, well, if they hit it, but maybe I can get out of here. And he did, and good for him.
Congratulations. Getting a no-hitter is such a cool accomplishment.
And it validates the Giants' decision to not trade him if, in fact, they were even really thinking about it in the first place, which we really don't know.
I don't think they really were. Their team that if they had fallen back further after the break, I think they would have considered it. But as a team that's somewhat in the race, the message of trading Blake Snell that sends to the rest of your team is just not a good one.
The Blake Snell that pitched this week, 9 innings, no-hitter, is the guy you'd be happy to pay $30 million next year because it's only one more year that he's got.
The problem is you
there.
have to deal with the first half Blake Snell.
Exactly. So for any team that's got him, it's thinking like, okay, well, this is his time, and clearly that is the case.
Right. Clearly he's a second half guy. We've seen that through his career. I think we've even talked about it. So it's just interesting to see that, like, okay, yeah, he's turning it on, but I just don't think one pitcher is going to be enough for the Giants to leapfrog all the teams that they're going to have to leapfrog.
And the Giants, we did a whole episode on no-hitters in history, and now the Giants have 18 no-hitters. That ties the Red Sox.
Now, that 18 no-hitters, did we count the combined ones in that?
Yeah, no-hitters
Yeah.
are no-hitters. Yeah, absolutely. And they do have a combined no-hitter, at least one.
I think they threw one against the Mets, I'm pretty sure.
Tying the Red Sox for third most in Major League history, the Dodgers and the White Sox, right?
Right, the White Sox have more.
And that's just basically as much as because they've been around a long time. So if we flip over to the American League East, and we mentioned the Yankees and the Orioles being tied for first place, the Orioles themselves got a player back this week, and they needed him because Jordan Westburg broke his hand.
He just always
He's been killing it this year.
So they bring back Jackson Holliday,
who was sent down because he couldn't hack the major leagues at age 20 and all that. And guess what?
He's hacking now.
He can hack the major leagues. He hit a grand slam.
Hit another home run today on Sunday.
And so Jackson Holliday has sort of completely made the loss of Jordan Westburg less costly.
Made it a little bit more tolerable. Now, it's only been a few games, so there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to keep this up. But he is crediting, I guess, what we'd probably consider a strange aid here. And he says, oh, yeah, I've been playing a bunch of Golden Tee, the old bar arcade
when he got sent down to the minor leagues,
and
that's what he did.
That's what helped him get back on track. I mean, guys like to, credit their, increase to some strange things sometimes. But I think Golden Tee is probably the first.
So the Orioles only got to win those games because of Holliday, and the Yankees kind of held serve with them as well as they're tied. And something happened against the Blue Jays for the Yankees this weekend that I don't know that I've ever heard, is that Aaron Judge was walked with nobody on and nobody out in the second inning versus the Blue Jays.
I'm sure that happened in McGuire and Barry
or Bonds.
Yeah.
So I think Kelly Franco Troop said, well, he was in scoring position.
Well, yeah, because he's not right. And you know what? I'd rather.
That's a great comment,
right,
by
and
the
that
way.
just also shows you what the Blue Jays feel about their pitchers. And you know what? Then
they got 41 homers.
They also made the mistake later on that Kevin Gossman threw him a challenge fastball for some reason. One, why is he throwing that when he tops out about 94? And Judge showed him why you don't do that when he put that thing on the moon.
They're still looking for that ball.
He crushed that thing.
So and Sarah Langs came up yesterday with the stat that Aaron Judge now has 16 first inning home runs in 2024, tied for the third most in a season. So there's still a third of the season, a little less than that
left.
He's
tied with Sammy Sosa and Babe Ruth, and only A-Rod and McGuire,
who have 18 and 17. So he's going to break this record.
There's a very good chance he does.
If anybody throws this guy a pitch in the first inning for the rest of the season,
right? That might not happen.
May not. He'll just walk him every time. So there's some other injury news that I think we need to mention, and that is that besides Mike Trout out for the year, Lance McCullers Jr., who hadn't pitched since 2020.
Right. That doesn't. I feel like it's hard to be like, oh, this guy that wasn't.
But the Astros were hoping.
Right, but
the Astros
I
were
don't
hoping.
feel like that's not really injury news because this guy that's out continues to be out.
So
I don't know. I feel like if you're the Astros, were you really counting on a guy that hasn't pitched since 2022?
Yes. You need him. You need Verlander. He's pitching again in the minors, and he's going to come up and pitch. He's like, anybody with an arm that hasn't fallen off, we will take this guy. So, and how about the fastest pitch in the major leagues this year that happened against our Mets on Saturday night?
Ben Joyce almost hitting 105 against the Mets.
104.7, and J.D. Martinez said, I had to go back and look at it afterwards because I've never seen a pitch that fast. Which I think, this is J.D. Martinez, who is a noted fastball hitter.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens as guys keep creeping up to this, how Major League Baseball is going to kind of handle this. Because if guys start consistently throwing 104, 105, Are we going to have to move the mound back?
Well, we've talked about this before, and obviously we talked about our friend Mark Stevens' book about a guy that threw 110. So just take that to the next level. And you're saying, look, what if somebody was an outlier, right, more than Ben Joyce, and was able to go 5% more for some freakish reason?
Right. Could anybody even hit him?
So would your major, and this is one of the premises in Mark's book, is that, would Major League Baseball try to limit the speed at which a pitcher
I
could
think
throw?
they would probably not say you can't throw over an amount. They'd
If you
probably
throw over 108, it's going to call a ball.
No, I think they're just. I think
I
they'll
hope not.
just move the mound back to 62 feet.
Yeah, that's a big thing to do. That isn't a terrible idea because, in general, we think that it's gotten to the point where guys are just throwing so hard. And maybe it would cause the pitchers to not have to throw all out every time because that wouldn't be as important anymore. They'd have to actually go back to
Okay, they're gonna hit, they're gonna score.
Right.
We need guys to go deeper into games.
Right.
And maybe you do something else to give them. Maybe the flip side is you ban the iPads in the dugout, so the pitchers are like, okay, now they can at least watch video between every at bat.
You mentioned Jazz Chisholm and his first week, and I think we talked about it in our last podcast when I joked that he's the greatest trade deadline acquisition, which he's not maintained, by the way.
No, right. We all knew, but the fact that he played so well at the start has bought him enough goodwill with Yankee fans that
Totally agree with
that they're going to be happy with Jazz the rest of the season.
Right, they're jazzed about Jazz in New York,
and he could come in and play third base for them, which they desperately need.
Right, and because Torres said he wouldn't play third, so okay, I guess we're going to play third, Jazz.
Well, I think Glaber isn't going to be playing second there next season either, because he's only playing second. Well, they also had to move Glaber to second because that is his natural position.
Right.
And DJ LeMahieu was so unplayably bad that what if we can have Glaber and Jazz in the lineup? That's probably the best thing we can hope for.
But the Dodgers trade for Jack Flaherty, in which they gave up
they
a
got
fair
a good
amount.
first start out of Flaherty, but I think for the Dodgers, unfortunately, that's a trade that only matters about how he does in the postseason.
But based upon the way they've played lately, they need somebody to stabilize the rotation, or at least a bunch of
otherwise they
people.
might not be there.
Exactly. So I think that's pretty impressive that they got something out of this guy who is thought of as being one of the best. The players of the month were named for July, and it's something that I don't necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to, but I happened to do that this time. So if you would have told me that Brendan Doyle of the Rockies was the player of the month, I would have said, really?
I mean, he's had a very good month.
Yeah, he had a great month. And he had home runs, and obviously we know he's a Gold Glove, center fielder. And Bobby Witt Jr., that wouldn't have surprised me.
Right. But I think what's incredible is Bobby Witt Jr. had a 1389 OPS for the month of July. That's Judge's OPS for the season.
Yeah, I think the MVP is done, if you ask me, really, at this point.
I think the only way the MVP isn't done is if somehow the Royals win the division.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that if I were the Royals.
I'm sorry, Judge only has an 1157 OPS for the season.
So the pitchers of the month were Taj Bradley of the Rays, and again, another thing I would have not necessarily guessed, but I might have guessed that Dylan Cease, fresh off his no-hitter, might have been the guy for the Padres, and he was. Rookies of the month, we don't really talk about rookies so much during the season.
Rookie of the month feels like such a
but when you talk about rookie of the year at some point, thinking, well, who's had the most rookie of the months?
Right, but you could have a guy win rookie of the year without winning any rookie of the months.
Totally, and this month it's Colt Keith of the Tigers, who was a heralded prospect who has sort of not lived up to what everybody thought he might be, but I guess he had a good month. And Tyler Fitzgerald. No, I picked Matt Harrison.
You were really big on
rookie of the year, and he has done okay, but not as well as Tyler Fitzgerald even. And he had an unbelievable home run streak. I think he hit home runs in 5 consecutive games. The first rookie, to go deep in 5 consecutive games, which it doesn't matter if you're a rookie or not. Going deep in 5 games in a row is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah.
And 7 times in 8 games, 8 times in 10, feats that only Barry Bonds achieved in 20 years.
Great, I'm impressed, but we got to see him do it for a longer period of time.
Well, and good for him, and he's put himself maybe into the conversation because the National League Rookie of the Year is not anything that Shota Imanaga had the early lead in that.
Especially kind of like Kodai. Kodai Senga had a better season than him last year, so it's really the only way he's getting it is nobody even comes close to a Rookie of the Year campaign at this point.
And the relievers of the month
relievers of the month.
Well, if it's on your team, like when Evan Diaz had that award a couple of times, I think in 22.
I would still speak with it with the same tone.
Emmanuel Clase, no surprise to anybody, and Tanner Scott,
which is a big reason why he got traded.
Exactly, I think that's the main thing there. And speaking of closers, Paul Sewald, who we like to sort of disparage a little bit, lost his job as closer for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Right, they're going to use a combination of Ginkel, Martinez, and the newly acquired A.J. Puck to kind of paper over the crack right now until hopefully for them, Sewald can regain his form.
So you know what he did today?
What?
So he comes in the game not as the closer, and he gets them out in like the 7th inning, and they score a bunch of runs against Holderman of the Pirates. They win the game. A.J. Puck gets the save. Paul Sewald gets the win. So
he's already back.
I don't get the save, I get the win, and then I guess based on how he performs in this situation, they will determine what to do with him the rest of the year. And a couple of other notes that I thought I'd mention because it's August 4th here as we record here on Sunday evening, and I'm sure you don't remember this because you were not yet alive.
Make it very difficult for me, too.
Right. But it was something that I remember because I was a Met fan my whole life. Joel Youngblood was a marginal Met for a few years. And he, in 1982, had a hit for the Mets against the Cubs, which wouldn't really mean anything, except that during the game, he was traded to the Montreal Expos. So they pulled him out of the lineup, okay? They put him on a plane because they really wanted him to play for the Expos. He flew to Philadelphia, and he played for the Expos the same day against the Phillies, and he got a base hit. So he's the only guy
to ever get a hit for two different teams in the same day.
In two different cities
wow.
on the same day. And I think that's pretty cool. And I don't know if anybody will ever do that one again.
No, that'll never happen again.
Because that's like cruel and unusual punishment to have a guy have to do that.
That I can guarantee you that will never happen again.
1 year later, on the same day, August 4th, 1993, another Met.
10 years later.
10 years later, I'm sorry, it was 1993. Or 11 years later,
yeah.
Robin Ventura decided after being hit by a pitch from Nolan Ryan that he would charge the mound.
Probably not his best decision.
And Ryan pounded the crap out of him.
Yeah, young Robin Ventura learned his lesson that day.
And I'm sure Robin has to watch. He's had to watch that
I'm sure
video a million times.
He's made jokes about it.
I hope he has because they show it so much that it's like right, here I go. I'm going to go out and get my ass kicked every time.
Right. I'm sure he watches it hoping maybe this time it'll turn out different.
But it never does. So it's we're in the thick of it right now. I can't tell you what's going to happen because teams that like the Mets, we were talking about them earlier today. They were on such a good streak and they had scored so many runs and played so well for a while. Going, how long can it last? And it feels like it's not lasting now a little bit.
That like we've talked about so much, like you're going to go through these periods with the team, but you can't die when they're playing too badly, and you can't think they're the greatest team ever when they start playing well. So I think if you're a Met fan, you're like, okay, we're a tough West Coast road trip. We didn't win the series against the Angels, but you move on the same way the Dodgers and the Phillies. What you can't do with the Phillies is you can't stretch this into 2-3 weeks of bad play, where the only time you win is when Wheeler pitches.
And you have some, as you mentioned, pivotal series coming up this week because, besides a wild one where the Mets have to go to St. Louis and play a makeup game and then fly back to Colorado to play the Rockies the next day, the Phillies are going to play the Dodgers in L.A. That should be very interesting.
That'll be very interesting. Both teams haven't been playing
series.
well. Let's see if showing up to play each other gets them back in for playing great.
So I think that Houston is playing Texas. I think that's a real pivotal series because I guess one of those teams is trying to distinguish themselves as the team. But
that series is only as pivotal as much as you believe in the Rangers randomly waking up and becoming a different team.
So we'll do this podcast a week from now, and I don't know that we're going to know that much more about like what the playoff teams are going to be. This is going to happen all the way through
August
September.
4th. We're not going to really start having a good idea for at least another 2, probably 3 weeks on the 25th. That's when I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what you're looking at in terms of a wild card picture.
Because you figure somebody's going to trip and fall, and somebody might rise.
Right, exactly. Some of the teams in the NL Central are going to fall away. Some of the teams in the NL West are going to fall away. I think you're going to know whether or not a team like the Red Sox will be able to play in, and if the other team in the AL West will be able to play themselves into the wild card spot. Because otherwise, it's going to be a 3 or 4 team race in both leagues.
We're in the dog days of the season, and I think the pitchers are to the point where can the pitchers survive the next 7 weeks of the season? And I think that's going to be what determines who's going to make the playoffs or not. And I have no idea what's going to happen.